Hello viewers, welcome to CodeForAny. If you are new, hit subscribe buttons and notification bell so you can never miss any our incredible content. Accept Node.js App API and Admin API inside today need to continue here the booking API need to continue here. Yesterday we need to see this here. How can save this here the booking informations inside the database tables. And now need to first of all the fetch these booking details and then after need to find out here the drivers. Need to like this coding so need to set this here. First of all need this here. Write down here the DB query and to write down here the DB query and we need to call here select and to get this year's booking related or informations need to get this year's from need to give this year from as a booking detail tables, give this year the alias bd like this and to all this years it's plus signs, create here the brackets. Now need to write down here the errors and to return this here the results parameters and to write down here the functions operators and to call like this here. If you get any errors you need to return this here these errors like this and we need to write down here get this here the results length we need to check this here more than 0 else parts need to call this here and we need to helper dot print this here the log to write down here not booking info gets like this print here, but we need to get here the always this data. That's why maybe sometimes maybe possibles not get, but always gets here the data. That's why here the not matters here like this need to write down here. Now we need this here bd dots booking id. We need to get this here booking id. Then after bd dots need to get this here the driver id. Then after bd dot need to get this here's user id. Then afterwards you need to get this here bd dot get this here pickup latitudes and longitudes. Need here some informations. Need to copy here this value and we need to paste this here. So when happens copy this bd command, apply here. Then pick up longitudes, pick up address, drop longitudes, drop of address. Then pick up dates. Then after service id. Then after price id. Then after payments id. Then after the estimate duration distance, estimate durations and created dates. Like these parameters need to get years and like this value we need to get this years and another parameters we need this years need to give this year one by one, so need to get this years. Now also need to give this here bd dots get this years accept times. Then after to get this here the start times. Then after to need this here bd dot stop time. Then bd dot booking status. Then after need to give this here bd dot request driver id. Then after need to need this years. Under the tables need to get this here the data. Also need to get this here the minimum value, minimum kilometers like this. Need this here informations. Need to get this here. First of all, need to set this here. Inner joins need to set here. Inner join, and to give this here user details. So need to connect this here the details as ud on. Give this here ud dot user underscore id is equal to bd dots user id. These tables like these joints here. Under the tables need to join this here the price details tables need to join here. Need to write down here inner join, and to give this here price detail tables as we need to give this here pd ons methods need to call this here. Need to set here pd dot price id. You need to get this here price id is equal to bd dot price id set here. Another inner joins need to need this here. Write down here the service details as need to give this here sd on, and to write down here sd dots service id is equal to bd dot service id plus signs. Now need to write down here the where conditions. We need to need this here, and to set here where zd bd dots with this here booking id and question mark, and we need to write down here bd dots booking status is equal to question mark like this. We need to need this here the data, give this here the comma, and to write down here. And then after we need to get this here the result. Need to pass this here the booking id and booking status. We need to give this here dot here result dots insert id to give this here. And then after we need to bs dot pending status. We need to set this here like this sets, and to write down here the query. And now need to bind this here inner joins value. Need to first of all the give this here the value. First of all need to give this here pm dot zone id. Then after need to set here pm dot minimum kilometers minimum. Need to check inside the database typo. Minimum Select this set series. Then after need to give this here hash.service id. Already need to set this here service id. Then after need to give this here the service name hd.service name. Then afterwards need to give this here the service color hd.color. Then afterwards need to pass needs here s dot icons need this here. Then afterwards sd dots need to give this here ud. Need to check inside database the names and first name last name which columns need to use this here inside this table. User details need to use this here the name columns here. Then afterwards need this here ud dot display mobile numbers and display mobile code. Need to check inside the database mobile number and mobile codes. And also need this here the device tokens because need to pass this here the push notifications. So, and need to get this here user image ud dot image gets here the image. And also need this here the past concat this here the image path. We need to concat here. Need to get here the logins. Need to copy this here the concats, copy here, and we need to apply this here. Copy this here image. If null, I just need to pass this here the booking inside this informations gets here and to calling this here. Now here you need to create here the one functions for the driver request. Need to write down here the driver new request and to pass this here the this result records maybe need to all this years index of 0 like this value, need to pass this years, and we need to get this here the return response, need to get here the status value. Then after need to give this here booking info. Now need to create like these functions set here. Write down functions. Need to write down here functions paste this here, give this here booking details, callback functions like this, need to write down here like these functions need to calling this here. Now need this here the driver request sends methods need to inside need to need this here the latitudes and longitudes value, needs here first of all need to write down here the where conditions, give this here the latitudes is equal to and where longitude. Now need to pass here the float value, parse float, and to pass this here booking details, need to change this here, give this years, pick up latitudes, the need to check inside the database, need this years. Latitudes and longitudes. Like this, we need to get this here the informations, latitudes and longitudes. Now we need to go inside the helpers and to check this here, finding the nearby value, need to check here, find by locations, write down here functions, go helper class and to write down here functions, find nearby locations. Now need to give this here the lat long and need to radius of kilometers. And to return this here the callbacks functions like this function operators. And now need to write down here where latitudes is equal to parse dots, need to pass this here the lat where longitudes is equal to parse plot. Set here the longitudes like this. Then after we need to get this here distance find is equal to give this here the parse plot value and to radius kilometers like this. We need to get this here. Now we need to give this here the radius parameters, radius, and to give this here the earth radius, we need to give this here 6371. This is the earth radius. Then we need to get this here the max latitudes gets here is equal to latitude plus we need to brackets inside and to get this here the distance find divided by radius and we need to multiply by 180 and to use this here math.py. Create here the brackets and to over this here the brackets like this and to write down here semicolons. Same as we need to get this here minimum latitudes in latitudes and to minus this value like this. And then after we need to get this here the maximum longitudes and latitudes. Gets here vect max length is equal to longitudes is equal to give this here the longitudes plus signs and to all this here the methods inside to give this here the distance find slash give this here the radius. Then after need to need this here math dot cost methods need to call this years bracket inside need to pass this here the latitudes multiply by the math dot pi functions divided by 180 and then multiply by 180 and divided by pi value need to give this years and to create here the like this brackets. Now need to give this here the minimum latitudes longitudes. So need to get this here the min longitudes and we need to give this here the minus signs like this and we need to calling this years like this value and also need to print this here the both value need to print here the delogs methods need to call this years and to give this here past here the main let colons plus signs copy here this value paste this years 4 times. Now need to set here max length and to print this years. Now need to return this callback methods inside need to get this here min let then after need to max let then after need to min long and max long need to return these functions like this need to calling this here maybe need to change here the l value is good Need to fix this here the errors. Now need to save this here and to get this here the methods need to calling this here. So need to call this here the helper dot find by near and to pass this here the latitudes, longitudes, and we need to give this here the distance nearby. We need to check inside. Need to check here the 10 kilometers. Need to give this here the fixed value. We need to setting this here. Now need to get here the callbacks min let, max let, min long, and max long. Value you need to get this like years in these functions. Now we need to get this here the value years. First of all, need to get here already send it driver request already send request. Users need to get this here the list. Need to get this here booking details inside. Need to get this here the request slash driver IDs inside like this. We need to get this here at this value. And now we need to check this here the value already send request. Then we need to give this here the full equal double quotes. Then we need to give this here the value already request inside. We need to give this here the double quotes single quotes like this value. You need to pass this here and we need to print this here helper relog and we need to set this here already send request print this here this value already set request parameters and to write down here the plus sign like this. Now we need to write down here the DB query or the findings here the drivers set the database. First of all, need to write down here common structures errors and to get this here the results. If we need to get here the any errors and to write down shell bar throw errors HTML errors to return these functions like this. We need to write down so now need to write down here the query. First of all, need to find out here the user informations. Get this here, use this here user dot user ID. Then after need to need this here user dot device source is this here device source. Then after need to needs here this user push tokens like and after need to this user latitudes longitudes ud dot need to check inside the database latitude and ud dots longitudes And prompts, we need this here the tables of user detail, and to give this here the alias ud. And now need to joins, need to call this here the inner joins, need to call here need here the sound documents tables, sound wise documents, need this here the tables. Zone documents, give this here as need to give this here zd, and to write down here on methods. To write down here the zd dot zone id is equal to ud dot zone id, and to write down here zd dot service id is equal to question mark and conditions. To write down here, and to write down here find inside, call this here zd dots to give this here the service id, and need to give this here ud dot user selected service id user tables inside, need to need this here like this, and to give this here not equal to 0. And to get this here the value of related to this zones, and then after need to another inner joins, need to write down here inner joins, and to give this here zone wise car service, we need to need another tables, need to give this here is add w c, call this here the on methods, we need to call this here, and to write down here ud dot car id is equal to, need to write down here wcs dots, need to call this here user car id, and to write down here and uwcs dots, need to get this here the zone documents id, and is equal to zd dot document id. Like this, we need to calling this here for this inner joins, we need to check here identify this document. Now need to check here the where conditions, and to write down here ud dot user type, give this here the 2, then and conditions to ud dots status into write down one more than one like this, and need to write down here another end conditions ud dots is request send. Check here the flags equal to 0, and any request are the active sending. Now ZWCS dots need to give this years as a expiry date, so need to check this years. Question mark and ZWCS dot status equal to 1, and need to call this here ZWCS dot service provide is equal to 1, and to write down here the end conditions need to check this here ud dot need to get this here latitudes between need to write down here the mean latitudes, and conditions need to apply this here max latitudes, and another and query copy here need to paste this here, and to set this here the longitudes copy here to replace with this here main long and max like this. Need to apply this here the conditions between need to write down here, and then after need to another and conditions need to apply this here for these functions, and need to write down here ud dot is block, maybe we need to check user id and not in, need to write down here and to write down here already send request, and check this here ud dot user id not in, write down here one select query driver id from where pick up data types. Maybe need to this names. Between question mark and write down sequence. Status less than question mark to write down sequence. To write down here semicolons end of this query, and now need to pass this here the one by one's value. Need to give this here the parameters value. Give this here the booking details dots. Need to give this here the first service ID, first parameters, and then after need to give this here the booking details dots. Need to give this here the price ID, then after need to give this here the booking dot need to check here the another question mark service years, and after need to maybe one tables maybe forgets years. Inner joins to this here price PM once methods need to call this here PM dot on ID is equal to ZD dot on ID, and write down PM dot price ID question mark. You forget here price related informations, that's why. And then afterwards need to pass this here as a here the value. Now need to call this here helper log MySQL date times. Now need to give this here the formats dt, and need to pass this here the value. Need to give this here booking detail dots update. Now we need to call this here, copy here these lines and to paste this here again, like this value, MySQL date, all this SS. Like this, we need to call this years. And then afterwards, we need to call this here, another dates and to set here times increments, we need to give this here, paste time schedules, we need to call this here, helper, add minutes, need to give this here, the booking date times, also need to give this here the format, and then afterwards need to give this here the another parameters, add minutes, need to give this here, and we need to give this here at this times. And now need to give this here the needs here the booking status, yes, come like this. Need to pass this here and to get this here the results. And after need to getting this here the results, need to check this if results length more than 0 else parts, calling this here. If you not get any, and to view this here, no driver availables, and to set this here the status helper log, and to get this here no driver availables, and to view this here the details about driver. Now we need to get this here the results. We need to call this here the result dot for each. Get here the true value for each objects index and value. We need to get this here the results and pass this here the index dot distance. We need to get this here is equal to need to give this here helper dots need to call this here the distance methods need to needs here create go inside the helpers and to write down here the distance methods. You write here the functions need to write down here the distance let one and let two let one long one let two and long two and to return this here the distance to write down here the where radius let one is equal to need to write down here math dot pi multiply by the float to let one place same as need to copy this here this functions and create here the two set here the two and to get this here the theta is equal to parse plot and to call this here the long one and minus parse plot long two. Now need to get this here the radius theta is equal to math dot pi multiply theta divided by 180 and then after need to get this here the where distance is equal to need to write down here math dot since methods need to call this here the since let one multiply by math to science sine plus need to call this here the math cosec theta dot cos need to write down here the also multiply by math cost. Now need to get this here the distance is equal to need to write down here the math dot the cost and to give this here the distance like this then distance is equal to need to call this here the distance multiply by 180 divided by math pi like this then again distance is equal to distance multiply by 60 into 1.15 then we need to call this here the distance is equal to distance multiply by miles radius like this here. Now need to have this here if is none distance and to distance is equal to 0 set here. Return this here the distance value like this. So now call these methods inside this to call this here these functions as a distance past this value. Now to save this here the for distance, and we need to give this here the distance parameters, and we need to calling this here the latitudes, longitudes, driver info dots need this here is latitudes, and driver info dot to get this here is longitudes. Need to get this here the distance and to print this here. Now need to find out here the nearby drivers where I is equal to 0, and following this I multiply by result length, and to call this here I plus plus. Now another for loops need to write down here the for each for in where j is equal to I, and to call this here less than result dot length, and to call this here. Now we need to check here the if conditions results I dot distance parameters need to check this here more than results j of distance, and to call this here the result, and to call this here the swap functions maybe we need to write here check this all these swap functions I say like this need to call this here. Now need to write down here the commands driver list new request and logic, and to first of all need to find out here the drivers only live socket like this. For each you need to call this here, and need to write down here where I is equal to 0, and now need to check here the length is lizard dot length, and to check this I less than length to I plus. And one two variables is declared here. If you not gets inside any these for loops, need to write down here driver not live socket, and need to send here request as a nearby first driver only notifications, like this. Need to calling this here. Now need to print this here helper dlogs. Need to print this here. Need to write down here the new request push notifications fire. Only this push fires, and to return this here the callbacks methods, and need to give this here one for success booking details. Need to pass this here. Now need to identify here the sockets, active sockets. Need to get this here. First of all, need to go inside the supports and to find out here the how can get here the sockets. Need to explain inside the some previous video. Need to identify here the current socket. First of all, the connects after clear send message. We need to get this here the sockets. Copy here these lines. Okay. So now need to go bookings and to paste this here. Now need to give this here, change this here driver socket, and to get this here the connected controller sockets, we need to define the pulse where controller IO and where controller socket list, like this. And need to give this here the value controller dot IO is equal to IO, then controller dot socket list is equal to socket list, like this. Need to convert here, and also need to use this because need to call this here the outside these functions. That's why I need to like this. We need to callings and to save this here the variables reference inside these variables. And now need to identify here the sockets, and we need to calling this here this data. View this here controller socket list, like this, and need to like, controller socket IO. Okay, here's this here, and to emit this here this data, and to get this here the socket ID, like this. Our sockets need to identify here. Need to get this here the sockets. Need to call this here the another methods. Need to write down here driver push notifications fire. projects need to write down here logic. Now need to write down here the where response need to return this here is equal to set here the status is equal to set here 1 and to write down here the payload, and we need to write down here inside booking details like this. This is the results response. Need to calling this here and to change this here request new ride. This events we need to fire here and to pass this here this response here. Like this, we need to sending this here. If you get here the success this value, and we need to this here, and also need to return blocks. We need to call this here the callback. Need to set here once and to returns here the booking details like this. If you these driver sockets are the offlines, maybe need to check this here the connections. Driver socket not connected. To print here helper dot log result of I. It here. You get here the run these apps and to find out these drivers need to practice is the executions need to stop this here and to find out this. Now we need to not get here the bounce any drivers. Then we need to write down here if booking detail dot accept driver's ID is equal to not undefined, and booking details dot accepted driver ID not equal to blank, else parts we need to call it this here like this. Then to give this here the DB query and to update this here the data, update booking details and to set here the status driver ID is equal to accepted driver ID, and we need to write here the where booking ID not equal to booking ID like this, and to write down here booking details dots booking ID, and to get this here the errors and results function operators need to write this here write down here. If we need to get this here the error, and to throw this here helper dot log. These conditions may be calling this if you the driver cancels, and to find out here the other driver's request to not get accept any other users, then to automatically accept the previous accepted drivers need to set this here, and this request are the not cancels and return. Now we need to write down here results dot affected row. Or and to write down here the else parts need to call this here helper delog need to print this here the equals driver nearby info not driver away. Both are same and to call this here returns false callbacks and to set here the two status and to give this here the message equal not available equal driver availables. Like this, we need to call this here the return methods we need to call this here and else parts we need to calling this here for new booking request and this for the recall drivers not driver. Um, if you not get here the any founds, then to write down here the db.query and to write down here update status booking detail and to set this here booking status is equal to question marks and to set here the stop time is equal to question mark and where booking ID set here question mark like this and to pass this here the value this here booking node towards and to write down here the help class dot maybe need to give this here is now functions and then after need to give this here booking details dot booking ID and to get this here the errors and results function operators all these years if you get any errors and to get this here the results related information copy here so to paste this here this data vector sorts and to write down here booking status nearby driver not available like this calling here and to write down here user ride refund process maybe need to hit this years the amounts if you cuts user amounts then to refund to years the all amounts need to refund this years and to return this years driver not available message need to return this years, and these functions like this need to calling this years. And tomorrow need to explain this here the clone cron jobs need to here remaining inside these functions need to send request to here to fire here the notifications for these users need to not set it here. That's why I need to configure inside the tomorrow this video. Not possible to today here because very lengthy this video, and to take more times for the continue this API inside the next video. If you like this video, please give the thumbs up. If you're new user, so please subscribe my channels and press the notification bell icon. You can get every new video notifications and awesome content. If you have any question, so please write down the comment sections. I will help you and sort out your issue. Everyone have a nice day. Goodbye and take care.